There we go. Okay, so let's talk about some world building, because you know, it's part of D&D games. It's, that's the whole point of this channel. That's like 90% of what I talk about, and then some fighting games sometimes. So world building. Recently, some of the guys in our group, we just started world building a setting because that's something D&D players do sometimes. And I guess I wanted to talk about implications. Any given choice you make when crafting a setting is gonna have implications. Anybody coming? Like, we were talking about a few things. Like, the basics of this setting we're coming up with is there's a big ass planet. Seems like it's a really big planet, like an enormous planet, because it's got like dozens of moons. I don't know. Hey, it's skunk. I don't know if the moons are like as big as like Earth's moon or that kind of size. They're definitely big enough to have like mega cities on them, or maybe hive cities. I don't know what, exactly what we go with. Probably not hive cities, because that has other implications. But why is that guy so slow? What the fuck? What? Holy shit. That's a 40-mile-an-hour road, and he's going like 10 miles an hour. Anyway, where the fuck was I? So there's a big giant planet, and there's a bunch of moons, and a long time ago, there was a catastrophe of some kind on this planet that has rendered it largely uninhabitable. There's all sorts of fuckery going on the planet, super toxic forests, swamps that petrify anything that it touches, so only stone-based creatures live there. And that's also, as an aside, that's kind of world building. You just make something up. Does that sound cool? Yeah, let's see if it can work. That's a big part of world building. So there's a big giant planet, lots of shit going on, and that's also where all the valuable stuff is. That's where all the dungeons and the ruins and the ancient technology and lost magic and secrets and knowledge, and that's where everything is. And when this catastrophe happened, the populace of this planet was forced out onto the moons. How? I don't know. They got to the moons somehow, probably through a huge amount of teleportation circles that are all over the planet, that connect to the moons. And I haven't fully decided, but it'll probably end up being like, okay, here's the dwarf moon, here's the elf moon, here's the human moon, that kind of stuff. Like, they'll largely be kind of the same as like individual species / lineages, kingdoms, how it ends up a lot of the time. But I'm thinking there should definitely be like the larger, more cosmopolitan cities, which are like the main movers and shakers, where it's more like almost every race is present. You got everybody working in tandem, because that's kind of where it becomes more interesting anyway, to like where the different species can kind of rub up against each other, and their cultures and all that stuff can blend and have conflict and all sorts of stuff. Like, that's just where it gets more interesting. So, I mean, that's pretty simple. But one, some implications. If this catastrophe happened a long time ago, and all these moons have been cut off from each other, that's likely to result in a lot of like isolationist behavior. Like, nobody's heard of each other in, the number that was thrown around was like 75,000 years. That's a fuckload of time. And if nobody's talked to each other in that amount of time, there's going to be fear, like, because any given race is essentially just humans. A big chunk of any given species mindset is going to be based in humans because it's humans writing it, so that fear of the unknown is likely to be pretty prominent. So if these moons haven't had any contact at all, then it's likely that they'd be pretty fearful of each other and maybe try to cause wars or, any given thing. So that's going to be a problem if, especially if everybody's trying to work together to get down to the planet and do stuff on the planet. That's going to be a problem. And especially if you have like suddenly free travel to the moons or between moons, then what's to stop each other from just waging war directly on each other's moons? I don't know. What I was thinking, or I might have been thinking, maybe somebody else said it at first, I don't know. For reference, whenever I say I was thinking, just replace it with we. Because some of these ideas, I don't know who mentioned it first. We were thinking, like, maybe it should be one, the moons don't have a whole lot of resources, so they have to go down to the planet where there are resources. Two, maybe the moons have been in contact with each other for this whole time. Maybe there was a period of little to no contact, and contact was established. That way you can have, that leaves room for moons that haven't been in contact, and that lets the players kind of initiate contact and explore this new culture that's been on this moon for a while. And it also potentially presents a kind of, I'm not going to call it a war, but this conflict in the past, like between the catastrophe and now, where, there was a period of no contact, and then contact was established in however way, and there was conflict. And there can be stories and history there. That's pretty simple. Pretty easy narrative device to build some history into the world, into the setting. But also thinking along the lines of magic is very difficult to do out on the moons because magic comes from the planet itself. That's interesting. One, it makes it so that you can't just solve all problems with magic when they're out in the moons. You can't just solve all your problems with magic. Like, oh, we're running out of wheat, and a wizard comes by and he's, let there be wheat. So you can't do that, which creates some conflict and is more interesting. I just had it. It was just in my head. What the fuck? But so that creates another reason why characters have to go down to the planet. Another idea is the moons might be in contact, but they can't directly travel from moon to moon. Maybe they can, it's just really expensive. It's expensive, slow, or dangerous. Like that's the, the trifecta of how you can have work done to your house. You can have it fast, you can have it cheap. There's some you can pick. There's fast, cheap, and good. Pick two of the three. You can only have two of the three. So something, maybe it's like something along the lines of traveling from moon to moon. It's some permutation of that. Oh, there's a house back there. I never knew that. A little side street. So maybe you can have it, fast, safe, or cheap. You can have two of the three. So you can have it fast and cheap, but it's not very safe. You can have it fast and safe, but it's not very cheap, but it's very expensive. Did I just say that? You get the idea. Anyway, so, that's going to prevent people from both interacting from moon to moon. It's going to prevent like wars from happening. So even if there's conflict, so as we were discussing, it's kind of almost like a Cold War. Any kind of conflicts between the moons, because the only way they can really interact with each other is one, they send down their expedition teams that are going down to the moon to recover resources, or to the planet to recover resources. That's the only way they can do anything, or they can interact with each other directly. They can fuck up each other's resource gathering missions. Or they could like send an assassin down to the planet, and then the assassin goes up to the other moon, assassinates a target on the moon, and then has to leave. That's going to be tricky, getting back out through like the teleportation corridors. That's what I'm going to call them, because theoretically it's like there's teleportation from the planet to the moon and back and forth, but not moon to moon. And we talked a lot about it, like maybe this teleportation is some form of infrequent, or it's also dangerous. Like maybe it can only happen every other day, something like that, or a cycle, whatever a cycle means. Possibly just a day, but maybe it's, like maybe safe teleportation is once a week. And then you could do more frequent teleportation, but you can't teleport very much stuff. Or it's dangerous, or it's both, or like it has a chance to fuck up the teleportation circle, and then technicians on one side or the other has to try to make repairs to it before it's functional again. Something like that. Could be. Those are all interesting narratives, or interesting devices, but they all have implications. Like, okay, if it's dangerous somehow, how is it dangerous? Will space monsters attack? Okay, well that means the implication there is like you can do it if you have appropriate defenses, whether that's team of mercenaries, shields, any type of thing, and most of that can be solved with money if you're not an adventuring party. If you are an adventuring party, you just fight the things, and it's just another source of combat. Or maybe it's not like monster, it's not something that can be solved with combat, it's just like the oppressive void of space will threaten to rip people out, so you have to solve it some other way, usually involving gold, usually involving money. If instead it's likely to damage the teleportation circles and they go down temporarily, then that creates okay, you can do like an emergency teleportation back to the moon if you really have to, but it carries this almost more like political and economic risk, where your adventuring party, the players, aren't subject to direct consequences. Like they're not going to get sucked out into the void of space. They're not going to get attacked by monsters. They're not going to lose their fleet or something. Instead, it'll be like, oh, you guys had to come back up now, and you fucked up the teleportation circle for 3 weeks. Now we can't get our regular shipments. Now people in the slums are going to die. How do you feel? Like, you've killed people. How does that feel? Or you fucked up the profit margins for the big company over there. How do you feel? I don't care about that. Which has other implications. But that's just kind of how world building is. And largely, I feel like world building is half, wouldn't this be cool if this was a thing, and half, okay, what does that mean for the setting? Let me think about that for a second. You know, like if, oh, there's a monster on the planet's surface that burns so hot it can set the atmosphere on fire. Okay, how many of these monsters are there? Is it more than one? Are they awake? Okay. By sheer probability, the atmosphere is probably toast then, because if there's a few of these monsters and they've been alive for more than 10 seconds, the atmosphere has probably caught on fire. Like, just, you know, something like that. Or, oh, there's a widespread deep sea plague of parasitic worms that spread super quick. Okay, well, the whole ocean's probably taken over then. Like, what are the weaknesses of this parasite? Like, what reason is there for this parasite to not have taken over the entire ocean by now, if it spreads super fast and is super dangerous and super hard to resist? Maybe it can only survive in the icy depths. Like, any kind of heat wards it off. So, okay, there you go. Those are the implications. You know, things have to have some kind of weakness, otherwise they would have taken over everything, you know? Or this species that the one that Chief suggested, this like hyper durable big body insect race. Physically they're super durable, they're super tough, like lots of stuff. Why haven't they, what danger does the environment pose to them? Like, they're super adapted to the toxic environments they wander around. Why haven't they taken over everything? Like, if there's no conflict, then what's the point of this race? Well, there's big spider creatures that prey on them. And also they're like a super gentle race because they don't have to fight anybody, because they can just kind of exist. So, well, the more, quote, civilized races with technology can come in and clap their cheeks. Like, you know, they can't, like, they're super durable to most natural forms of predation, but a dude with a magical sword can just split them in half. So, that's some conflict right there. You've also got some built-in oppression narratives. That stuff's always cool. But, you know, there's always implications, and I always find a lot of enjoyment in working out those connections. Like, okay, what would this mean for the setting? What would this mean for this species? What would that mean for this form of technology? So, yeah, like, circling back a little bit, a lot of, if magic is only, like, really viable down on the planet, like, the planet is the source of magic, and you can't really do magic up on the moons. How exactly? You know, and we threw some ideas around, like, you can take chunks of the planet. Like, ideally, you can't just grab some dirt and leave. It has to be some sort of, like, specialized, crystallized, condensed form. Like, you know, a big glowing magic crystal. That's iconic. Very iconic imagery. Something like that. You can take something like that up to one of the moons, and you can do magic around that. Something like that. So, yeah, there's just lots of implications.